3 years in, there's no denying the Nintendo Switch eShop is a scary place. So many games hit the platform, many of which you'll know little or nothing about, meaning it's hard to know which ones you might want to buy. Now this is where we can help. We play a huge number of Nintendo Switch eShop games, and today on the channel we have 10 recently released Nintendo Switch eShop games we think are well worth buying. Sit back and relax while making sure you've subscribed to the channel, and having done that, let's jump straight into the action. The first game in today's rundown came out on the Nintendo Switch in early March, and while available on other platforms, it plays and feels and looks all round the best on the Switch. Knights and Bikes is an action-adventure game that takes place on an island off the coast of Cornwall in the UK, where you play as two kids called Nessa and Demelza, alongside their pet goose, deliciously named Captain Honkers. It's a tale while predominantly uplifting, it does show and touches upon the economic downturn seen within the UK within the late 1980s, and the recent death of Demelza's mother, with a comic book cartoony crayon-like art style that does so well to further illustrate the game's humorous sections, with in some places it being laugh-out-loud funny. The puzzles are never overly challenging, with them usually needing the duo to work together, and like the combat, Knights and Bikes on balance feels all the better for it when playing with somebody else and not without the AI, which at times can lead you donkey and carrot-like to the solution. All in, Knights and Bikes is an excellent and fabulous game about friendship, adventure, and how the power of imagination can steer you over and around tragedy. Edgar Bokbok in Bolzac came out on the Switch in late February, with it featuring an eccentric outcast called Edgar, who grows squash in the woods with a chicken as a companion. Essentially a point-and-click adventure with puzzles thrown into the mix for good measure, it's also dripping with tack-sharp satire and smartly produced dialogue within a story that's whimsical, although dark in places. It also comes with many sections of brilliantly timed laughs and humour. It's also just so bright and cute to look at, and it's a real little treat of a gem to have on the eShop platform. Up now, not one but 2 games in the same series, and as this video comes out, Bleed 1 and 2 Double Bundle Pack is on sale across many of the Nintendo Switch eShop stores worldwide, at more than 80% off, and at just over $4 US, euros, and under £4 UK. It's one of the best deals to be had over the entire store. Out this March 5th just gone, this bundle gives you double the dose of this not-so-little smash indie game hit, with its super stylish bullet-dodging action and platforming shenanigans, with you mainly playing as Ren, a pink-haired, hard-as-nails protagonist, as she goes up against hordes and hordes of baddies and bosses, with the aim of becoming the greatest hero of all time. Like many games we've played on the Nintendo Switch of late, it's the local couch co-op that does it best for us, although when played solo, there's still so much about this bundle to recommend, with it having oodles of replayability, which means we'll be coming back to both of these games many times to come. As the saying goes, our number 7 in this rundown is something completely different. Wide Ocean Big Jacket follows a pair of teens called Ben and Maud as they go on a camping trip with Maud's aunt and uncle. What makes Wide Open Big Jacket that little bit different is how, rather than controlling the characters, much of the game is spent moving the camera viewpoint, and in doing so, you have the story tick over from this particular viewpoint. It's also mostly, if not all, narratively based, and a relatively short offering, coming in at, let's say, 90 or so minutes of playing time. As for the story, well, it's fairly seamless, if a little awkward in places, and it's an interesting way to spend an evening on the sofa as the story unfolds, and by the end, it might have you thinking that little bit more about your own friendships and relationships with others. Wide Ocean Big Jacket came out on the Switch in early February, and is currently priced under $10, pounds and euros. As kids from the late 80s, there's much to recognise in 1980X, with it being an unashamed and unreserved love letter to video games of the latter part of the decade. And why stick with one genre when you can lay out such tributes to more than one at the same time? While kind of sounding a tad on the messy side, 1980X manages to blend 5 different games from 5 differing genres, with it hitting more than it misses. The homage to Streets of Rage, Beating Heart and the R-Type horizontal shooter clones are the game's high points, although the tribute to Sega's Outrun, called The Runaway, is also pretty well implemented. We weren't quite so sure about Kill Screen, the JRPG dungeon crawler, or the Shinobi-like shadow play, with it needing you to memorize level sections to avoid traps and spikes, although visually and aurally, all of this is a triumph throughout. And as we mentioned earlier, as kids from the late 80s, 1980X is a fine, if rather short, tribute to that period of gaming. As we've already alluded to in this video, long-time and perhaps newcomers to the channel will be well aware how much we adore couch co-op games, and we're always on the hunt for something to take the place of, let's say, Overcooked or Heave Ho as our go-to games when we want to play together as a collective. While Tools Up, which came to the Switch towards the end of last year, doesn't quite hit the same sort of high notes, it does a really decent job of trying to achieve this kind of greatness. As you can see, here you play with up to 3 others in what's really a home renovation game that has you building walls, doing a spot of painting and putting down flooring according to a level's blueprints. Naturally, it's a frantic affair and things can get reasonably heated in true Overcooked "where's my meat" level of discussions, particularly as you're often working in close proximity with others and with the house itself acting as physical barriers and getting stuff done. Tools Up really is a decent couch co-op game and will tide us over nicely until Moving Out, our most anticipated couch co-op game of the year, comes out at the beginning of next month. Landing on the Nintendo Switch towards the tail end of February, our number 4 in this best games currently on the eShop rundown is Bloodroots. The keen eyes amongst you will immediately spot the heritage and influences of the Hotline Miami series, together with the artwork of the likes of Samurai Jack. We were also really lucky to catch up with the developers at a recent trade show, with them also pointing out that much, if not all of the things you find in the level, from carrots to chickens to carts to pikes to swords and so on, can be used by your character, with this coming from the Jackie Chan school of anything goes in terms of weaponry at your disposal. While super violent, the blood and gore is all cartoony based, with all of this also being held together by a really strong, if a little predictable, Western-inspired storyline that could make one heck of a great Quentin Tarantino movie that's as gory as it is gorgeous. The Talos Principle came out on PC in 2014, and also onto other consoles of this generation over the last few years, with the Switch being the last of the big platforms to get a port. And having once more gone through and played the first-person puzzle game, we can very much recommend it if you've yet to play it before and you fancy some decent looking and playing logic puzzle gaming. The puzzles begin gently enough, with most of them coming at you in a non-linear order, and while they might not be overly troubling, players will for the most part need to get in tune with the overall logic that's required. We're not going to touch on the story though, as to do so would be overtly spoilery, and it would rob you of such discoveries. We will however make a point of saying the narrative is a captivating part of the Talos Principle, and while we've played it before, this Switch port is a most welcome addition to the eShop, particularly as this version includes the previously paid for DLC as part of the full retail bundle.
Let your will be done.
At number 2, Murder by Numbers came out on March 6th, just gone, and is a puzzle adventure visual novel where you play as an actress on a hit TV show, determined to clear her name having been accused of killing your former boss. It sees you team up alongside a reconnaissance robot known as Scout, and here you'll be exploring late 90s Los Angeles while investigating a number of murders across TV studios, swanky award shows and much more. In this one you dig up clues to solve the crimes by searching around the city, solving puzzles and interrogating folks you meet along the way. The puzzles are all pit cross based, and while some might scoff at their difficulty, with them never being more than a 15 by 20 grid, in places they offer a decent level of challenge. While repetitive, and that's kind of the point, Murder by Numbers is a great mix of cartoon-based puzzling that really did leave us wanting more. At the number 1 position for this best indie games on the eShop episode, Afterparty is the latest game from Night School Studios, who blew many of us away with their first game Oxenfree, and while this is very different, it's every much a worthy successor. It's a story about friendship, regular struggles people can have with their day-to-day existence, and of course, death. You play as Milo and Lola, who somehow find themselves both dead and in hell, and have the opportunity to escape the underworld by taking on and beating Satan himself within a simple-sounding drinking contest. As you might expect from a game from Night School, and with the overall topic at large, the dialogue is sharp, witty, and in places so very, very offensive. It's also wonderfully funny, and while the subject matter is heavy, it does everything with a light comedic touch without the background horror and menace of Oxenfree, which we really kind of enjoyed. What does work so well within its 8 or so hour trip through hell is how strongly we found and liked Milo and Lola, in how irrelevant they both are and how they begin to understand and realise what happened to them when they died and why they ended up in hell rather than the other place. Brilliantly voice acted throughout and looking ever so beautiful, and while so different to Oxenfree, it's every bit as much as an unmissable experience, and right now, it's one of the best new games you can play today across the entire eShop platform. With Ghost Runner finishing off this rundown, we're almost out of time. While we're here, please be sure to like the video, let us know which one of these you want to see more from down in the comments, and if you haven't done so, subscribe with the notification bell turned on, which really helps grow the channel, and as always, we're most grateful for your ongoing support. Many thanks for watching, we look forward to welcoming you all back here soon for more indie game videos.